Buenos dias.
Hello, hello, hi.
Hi, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Morning, everybody.
Love this for us.
It's good. How are you? How have you been? How's your
I'm
week been?
okay. I'm a little bit sweaty right now. I went out for a jog. And when I say jog, it's like a slightly fast walk. Okay. So if you see me out and you're like, oh, is that what you call jogging? Just keep on walking past me. Okay, because yes, that is what I call jogging. So I
Exactly
went out and I
what
did that.
jogging is. I wouldn't even feel away. I feel like that's exactly what jogging is. And me personally, I find it kind of confusing that you can walk Olympically and
They're definitely walking faster than I was jogging. Okay, so I just want to say that
but when they do the Olympic walk,
definitely the case.
when they do the Olympic walk, people go like that.
Yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, so I do like I'm used to people lapping me now when they're just strolling.
They look back at you as well.
And it's almost a game. It's like, like I don't know, like paperboy or something where you have to catch them. I have to see how many people are lapping me. Like I just how many every time someone laps me, I get a point. So,
So you,
I'm gonna do
you
this like reverse psychology, but on myself.
you don't count the laps that you're doing. You just count how many times you're lapped.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it makes it way more fun because otherwise we'll never get anywhere. They'll be, you know what, this is the ultimate celebration of mediocrity and I'm here for it. So what? What now? Okay. So so I'm basically very sweaty at the moment. So I've like literally, although I'm sitting, I'm perched on my boudoir, my bed. I also have a towel down because that's gross. And well, yeah, yeah, no, I do. I genuinely do. I
Listen,
think I've just overshared, so I'm going to stop. How are you, Dane?
I'm good. I'm good. In order to show solidarity with you while you are sharing, I'm at that point where my hair is not completely gone, but it does grow back in certain areas where it doesn't grow in other areas. So I've got like, and if you are someone who watches Hong Kong cinema or kung fu films, I'm really rocking a Fong Sayuk right now, where there's hair, but the hairline starts at a very disadvantageous part of my
Mm,
head. Or I've got what some people call the widow's peak, but because I'm not a widow, then yeah, I've got the big.
yes.
I got a big money man. The
Don't
big,
limit yourself this
yeah.
time. No, I'm joking.
I've got the big money man or the
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It's
Which
giving like cartography, right? It's giving. I got the whole world on my head.
that act of evil. I got like a rhomboid going on, and this yeah, a rhomboid is not the thing for the top of your head. It's like if I was a supervillain, I'm good to go. Or like the Vision from Avengers,
Yes.
the big triangle and diamond. I got the triangle, but I got no diamond, and so not even a diamond. It's the Infinity Stone. So
Oh,
my head is lacking an Infinity Stone right now, or a cup. But
okay.
so it's early morning breakfast banter. Everyone's trying to get through it. It's Friday morning, and yeah, hopefully those of you who are tuning in on your way to work, this will be a nice way to you
Mm.
know.
Or you can always watch it later on the socials. It's okay. Like, we're okay. We're okay speaking to ourselves. We do it every day when people are not listening. At least I
Everyone
do.
does. I think it's important to, but we just want to keep you guys company on your way to the commute, getting you in the right mindset to get through this last slog before the weekend begins. Don't work too hard.
Yeah.
And,
It's Friday, Friday. Gotta get down. Do you remember that banger by Rebecca Black? No, just
I
me.
remember
Okay.
Rebecca Black. She dealt with a lot as a result of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
But she gave us an alter. She gave us a one-hit wonder, and what a wonderful hit it was.
There. I think it was her and Samuel with what in the butt. These are some of the
Classics.
early influences and legends of YouTube. So which we're also streaming on. So if you are on YouTube, then yeah, please do send us some love and messages. We appreciate. We appreciate. So
First things first.
first things first is that I should let you know, Zen, that I bust case, but more on that later.
Okay. Okay. Is this on the agenda? Because I didn't see that. I didn't actually scroll from the agenda. I didn't have
It's
time.
not on the
I
agenda.
was sweating while walking. So,
Nice segue that I think a lot of people, there have been forces out there that have tried to sanction and reprimand and almost erase your boy because of his views in
mm,
opposition to genocide. I mean, myself personally, it's only because coming from a historically oppressed minority, I can see that there is this intersectionality between the plight of my people and the plight of others around the world. But for some reason, Z, for some reason, there are some of us who, despite the fact that we are dealing with a common enemy and oppressor, an impeder of our rights to civil liberties, some people have decided to create a rift between both Black people and Palestinians, and
Indeed, they have.
it's a,
Uh,
it's a bit of a madness, to be quite honest. Very sad.
it is a bit of a madness. So, in case you're unaware, obviously, well, you know what's really interesting for me is that we have had this pro-Palestinian, big global pro-Palestinian movement since October the 7th, which is fabulous. But, you know, the older heads among us and those that have, you know, always kind of had social consciousness and social awareness as part of their raison d'etre will know that this isn't something that began on October the 7th, despite the propaganda and the AI and the use of all the false information and people trying to say there was a ceasefire, but they broke it on October the 7th. That wasn't the genesis of everything. So there's always been that kind of long history of, you know, the struggle of the Palestinian people on their land, and trying to basically have freedom within their land. So since October the 7th, one of the things that I've said about that day and what came after it is that it's been such a high price to pay for the Palestinian people, but it's raised the social consciousness and awareness around the world, particularly in America. And I think that particularly, having spent time in the US, and I know that you have as well, they have news that tended to be quite inward looking. And I don't even just mean about the US. Sometimes it would just be about the state that you're in, you know, like,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
very
particularly
restrictive.
regional. Yeah, news in America can be very
Yeah.
left.
In a way that, and this isn't even, because I feel like sometimes when you talk about your experience, or you know, you make comparisons with the UK and the US, there tends to be this need to fight back. This is just an observation of what it is. Whereas, you know, we are a smaller country, and by virtue of that, you would be more outward looking. There is only so many things that are going to happen in the UK. I mean, now,
We are also at the nucleus of an imperial paradigm of power and influence. So
yeah.
by being aware of what happens within our own country, like we've been able to kind of just through the merit of our own empire surveying over its other.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think there's also, and I think it's getting worse now with the internet, because I guess the mainstream channels are leaving it up to the internet or whatever. They're things they just won't bother covering. But I do think if I think back 25, 30 years ago, or whatever, and I've been going to the US since I was a kid, there's a stark difference in the way that news was reported.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
massive.
like, you know, the Rwanda genocide,
Yeah.
that was on our, you know, in a way that maybe I could possibly speak to people of our age in the US, and some of them wouldn't know that. And I wouldn't say that they were stupid people or anything like that. And again, it isn't a criticism, but the way that the media and the channels and everything like that was, things were broadcast over in the US, it was just different, you know. And so a lot of people would say, because they often go, oh, they didn't teach us that in schools. They didn't teach us that in schools, but our news, I mean, also, you know, we were like, you know, poor, like Rishi Sunak didn't have Sky TV, so we had like 4 channels. Yeah, so when news came in, you watched it. We even had our own news. We had news round, you know, where we were like, oh, okay, this is what's going on.
That's an
So
interesting. Yeah, that I feel like even creating a culture of actively seeking information is not something that you'd observe in America, because obviously a larger emphasis and obviously a larger industry is entertainment, and that's obviously
yeah,
there's going to be in a conflation of both entertainment and current events that happens in America, which you probably would have a lot more regulation over here in the
yeah,
UK. So
yeah. So it's more of an observation than a necessary criticism of Americans on an individual level. But so we've had that, and what's happening now, obviously in the US, is that they're having, like, all over the world, it seems like we're having elections this year.
mhm.
So it's been a very long time in politics, as they say, because we started with one thing and we're ending up with something else. And so obviously Biden was there. Biden, you know, it looked very much like Trump was going to wipe the floor with Biden. And then so he quit, as he should have, because, you know, he just definitely wasn't up to health wise. He didn't seem like he was all there. And Kamala's taken over.
Mm.
And what's happened since Kamala has taken over is that specifically the Trump administration have really lost their footing. They haven't seemed to be able to kind of find something to get at her and stick. Like
Like
Biden
the
was
entire
like,
campaign was
"Ooh."
impinging on the fact that they were going to like continue to reference Biden's inability to just have his mental faculties, and the
Yeah,
fact that Trump is marginally younger than him was supposed to.
yeah. So they can't. They've had to about
Yeah,
turn on that, right? So we've got Kamala there. She's got Tim Walz there. They've got, you know, yeah, and it seems like a solid pairing, something that could go up against Trump. Now, you know, I'm not going to ever underestimate the ridiculousness of the electorate. But, you know, like, it seems like, okay, cool, there may be a chance that Democrats will win. What's emerged now from this argument is, and this, it wasn't the genesis of it, I think, but one of the things that crystallized it for me was, I think she was in Michigan, but I don't know. It was one of the M's, and Kamala, this is, and she was giving a speech, and there were pro-Palestinian supporters at the march. Sorry, at the convention or whatever the hell it's called. And at some point, so the clip that goes viral is her going, "If you want Trump to win, just say that. Otherwise, at this moment, I'm speaking." Yeah. And so that went viral. And so there was a lot of discourse about whether she should have spoken like that. And some people were like, she shouldn't have done that. The longer clip is that she acknowledged them, actually. So she had acknowledged them and whatever, and said everyone wanted a voice and whatever. And then she got to a point where I think a lot of people may have, were like, bruv, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm either talking, do you know what I mean? Like, let me say something or whatever, you know? And,
Listen,
and
when you're public speaking and you have hecklers, being able to think on your feet and be able to give a cordial and measured answer is not always the easiest thing I can do.
Said the comedian. Exactly.
You feel like you are dealing with.
And I can imagine it's difficult, but I think there's also, and this is not me trying to be like, diminish the pro-Palestinian cause at all, but I think there's an element of, so they've said, so people have then levied this thing and said, well, why haven't you gone and protested Trump? Yeah, because you're doing this, but it's not very helpful. And we've had this discussion as well. In this country, you know, everyone wanted the Tories out, but I wasn't going to vote Labour in good conscience. But I can do that in this country because we don't have a two-party issue. Like, yes, there are two main parties and they're always going to go get in, but you can push the Overton window by getting other MPs elected that are more within your.
Of us that voted for the Reform Party.
Yeah, well, there you go. But what I'm saying, I mean, look at the fact, like, two sides of, well, they're not two sides of the same coin, but two opposite ends of the spectrum. You had Caroline Lucas for the Green Party. She was the one MP that did quite a lot to hold the government accountable on her own, right? And then you had Farage, who has never been an MP, but managed to push the Conservatives to bring in this Brexit vote that nobody really wanted, because I think actually when they were polling the country, no one really gave a shit about the EU membership or whatever. Well, I don't think it was even in the top 5 of list of priorities, but Cameron, wanting to appease the extreme parts of his party, was like, oh, okay, you know, we've got Farage knocking on the door, or we don't want the MPs to go over there. So the MPs, singular MPs that have the charisma, that have that, you know, that sway, can make more of a difference in this country than they can in the US.
Or MPs that are able to, who were able to tap into via populist ideology. But
it isn't just populism, because that's why I used the example with Caroline Lucas when she was there. So I agree with the populism, but I do think that electing a certain amount of MPs outside of the mainstream parties can help to force stuff, especially when they don't get, and it also kind of demonstrates that you don't just have this mandate to go and do whatever you want, you know, in a way that our system is different from in the US. So in the US, by and large, and if there are criticism to be leveled at Kamala, absolutely level them, but it's almost as like there's so many at Trump, we just won't bother leveling any, and we're focusing on Kamala, where people that have discernment may go, well, actually, I didn't know she was doing that. But you don't have another choice in the US, because there's this idea that if you don't vote for Kamala, that's some sort of protest. No, you're then essentially just voting for Trump. Like, that's the way it is. So what's come out now, sorry, and just to get to the point, cut to the chase, is that there have been certain factions where Black women in particular, Black people in general, have been saying they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. And they've now been criticized and said, well, you can't be pro-Palestinian and vote for her, because she, even though she said that she wants a ceasefire, her actions haven't shown that. Now, it's very easy, and I'm probably guilty of it as well, but it's very easy when we're looking at people in power and people in certain positions to just constantly level criticism. You know, like, they should have done this. Yes, she is the VP, but she is also running a campaign and has as much time as the opposition and all of these other things, and she's managing all of these other things to do. And the problem that I have with this particular attack is that, as somebody that identified as pro-Palestinian way before October the 7th, way, you know, like decades before of any of this, is that what you're saying is that these people should put their actual safety on the line to make a protest vote, which will result in their situation getting worse and nothing actually improving for your situation. For what reason? You know, and so that all of this criticism has come, and now what this has led to is this is a divide between these two communities, or some to an extent. I don't think it's as deep as what people would like to amplify it to, but this divide where it's kind of like, well, this is the thing because you're anti-black, and what you've had now on you had black women coming out and making videos, which I agree with. They're kind of saying, look, you can't ask us to not be okay to make some point which isn't going to change anything. The best we can do is try and put the best candidate in there possible,
and
and then make pressure.
hold them to account.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best that we can do. But we can't put someone that said he wants to finish the job.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
But I mean, anyway, like a large part of the problem as well is that it's this, which seems to be the larger battle, particularly from the diaspora or the African American voting caucus, that you're holding us to task in a way where we've never had that level of political power or leverage to
100%.
make much of a difference. And the best we've been able to do historically is to elect representatives that kind of look like ourselves or make show us somewhat a high level of empathy to our community, and then hold them to account when they are in office. But like, there's, like I said, there's a number of different factors that are involved in this that does not just focus on the events of October 7th and then the narratives that have followed that. Because this same thing, arguably, you could be kind of levying the same argument against like white women voters, and why no one pressured Ruth Bader Ginsburg to come out of the Supreme Court to prevent another conservative judge being elected to that office. But also the fact that like holding black women to task and critiquing them for their voting choices, I feel like is massively unfair, because at the end of the day, like with Trump, it was 55% of white American women that voted for Trump. And this is a guy that said he grabs women by the pussy. And there's never been no large discussion that I can see amongst the global contingent of people who identify as feminists in the Northern Hemisphere that have had the discussion to determine who is accountable for that happening. And yeah, also but like in terms of like when I looked into this story, it's been like a lot of revelations about some of the anti-blackness that has continued to be endemic within Arab communities or within that diaspora, referring to like black Palestinians as slaves and kind of ignoring that the intersectionality there. And also on the other side, people not failing to be cognizant of the fact that black people holding sway in politics and being able to influence political or elections, particularly in America, is still a relatively new thing. And developing the political acumen in order to exercise that power is still new to people as well. But what we've seen is that a lot of African American, particular content creators on TikTok and other social media platforms, when they've been having dialogue with pro-Palestinian activists or pro-Palestinian content creators, find themselves being silenced or marginalized, or being accused of single issue voters, of voting for the lesser of two evils, but really being advocates for evil. And personally, I feel like it's just very unjustified.
I do agree, and I think there's also an element of, and it's so funny. There's this woman on TikTok that I'm like mutuals with, and she deals with authoritarianism. So she's got I don't know if she has the PhD or she's studying the PhD, but she's done stuff in China and looked at authoritarian governments. And she was talking about the rise of the populism and the right in Europe, and how the things that we can do to hold the right to account and to try and kind of marginalize them. And someone in her comment said, well, what will we do to protect ourselves from the extreme, or from the left or something like that? Just the left. I don't think he said the extreme left. And she said, oh, don't worry, the left will eat themselves. We will eat ourselves. And she's absolutely right, because that's what happens on the left. There's this puritanical expectation that, well, there's this one issue, and if they're not right on every single issue, that needs to be on the left of things. And actually the political views are a spectrum, right? So they may be much more left leaning on certain things, but you may hold more conservative views on something. And I don't think you should, me personally, I don't feel the need to be wedded to any kind of extreme leftism, and I don't mean on the extreme. I don't mean that. I just mean my views I feel that some of my views may be much more centered of things. I just have the capacity to say, you know what, that's my view, but I don't necessarily need to impose it on anybody else. And I think the sad thing about this has been not only these attacks on black women, who are the least protected demographic in the United States of America, and traditionally, just because this biracial black or whatever woman is now being elevated to this position,
least protected in a disputed area as well, because there's black women who would have been in Israel who would have had to deal with subversive sterilization programs, black women who will be both black and Palestinian by the merit of intersectionality, who are still dealing with the same genocide, just like any other Palestinian Arab that we can see as well. So
Yeah, no, it is that, and they have the least protection, but there's also for me this thing where it's making them question things. So I've seen these videos of these black women talking about, well, you know, Arabs have done this and Arabs have done that, and I think that's really sad. And the reason, and I don't blame the black women, but I think it's sad because now what you've done by doing this, by attacking people that have traditionally stood up for marginalized groups all the time. If you look, there's always black women being the backbone of resistance of everything, is that you have these women now almost, and I don't, and I'm not saying this is what, but it comes across as though, okay, well, my activism or my humanity or the humanity I see in you is going to be transactional, because actually, well, now if you haven't done that for me, I haven't done. And I'm going to be honest with you, like the situation in Congo, the situation in Sudan, the situation in Palestine, for me, like those situations, it's not, again, it's not one of these things that's the impression Olympics, is that, well, how can we position ourselves best in a very, very imperfect world to be able to help these people? And so guess what, Trump is probably not going to be the best for that, and I'm, you know, like that's just the long and short of it. So if you're doing something that puts him in that place, you're actually the problem. I'm sorry, that's the long and short of it. Is sometimes you have to eat your shit sandwich, and if you don't like Kamala, you don't have to like her, she's not going to be your friend, but Trump will be worse. And we know this because he has been in power. Because are we forgetting he was the one that imposed a whole Muslim ban, a whole Muslim
He was
ban.
the person that stopped recognizing a two-state solution as Obama was trying to put into place. And then obviously Obama got a lot of criticism as well, because even though he would have initiatives, because the Senate would reject them, people said that he didn't do anything for black people. But I was like, no, the things he did were basically rejected by the Republican part of the contingent within the Senate. So, I mean, what a lot of people seem to be kind of veering towards without necessarily saying it or understanding it is that they feel like whoever realizes power in the States will have a certain level of autocratic power and will be able to say something like ceasefire and that'll be the end of it. Like, if we're all realistically talking, we understand that a military industrial complex has an influence and sway in elections, and like you said, can be as extreme as endangering the life of somebody like Kamala Harris if they do try to like forcefully
If she
initiate.
ever came out and said the first thing I'm doing is banning all weapons, she would never get elected. She would never get elected. Whether she wants to or not, she can't come out and say that prior to getting elected. She will never be elected. Do you think APAC's going to be like, oh yeah, we're going to let her get in? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely
Yeah,
not.
I thought. I mean, it's a real strange thing to think that this is the point of division that's happening right now, and it really, as we have been able to successfully raise awareness about the both genocide and the plight of Palestinians, which again for me, we have to emphasize will include Black Palestinians as well. Like, for that now to be stalled because of this single voting issue, I think is quite a shame. And it's, again, me personally, I might be wearing the tinfoil hat on top of this beanie hat, hiding my Bermuda Triangle. But personally, I feel like there is a lot of intrigue taking place where when this rift begins to form, then there will be people who have interest in causing this division who will stoke it even more and create a larger wedge between, egalitarian Arabs as well as the African diaspora. And so we need to get nip that shit in the bud right away, and people need to recognize who their common enemy is and realize what we can do strategically rather than being led as alone by emotion. Because as much as we would like to, applying a framework of morality to politics as it currently exists is not necessarily going to work. If we're going to have a discussion about dismantling the system, then that needs to be the discussion. But being like, no, you can't vote for Kamala and vote for Trump, when Trump himself says, I will finish the job. A person who, in his last discussion with Elon Musk, were downplaying the effects of the use of nuclear proliferation, probably not going to be your guy. So
you know who else isn't the guy or isn't the girl? But bumped. Why don't you go for it, mate? Tell us what you're going to say.
Mate, global scandals continue to engulf our world and our perspective right now, because the scandal with Rachel Gunn, aka Ray Gunn, aka
Pow, 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 pow.
the progenitor and innovator of not breakdancing but broke dance,
Broken.
or up dancing, deepens, because according to a recent thread, there is now a petition that exists basically to hold Ray Gunn and Anna Mears accountable for unethical conduct and Olympic selection.
So
Because
who's Anna Mears? Sorry.
Anna Mears is she is the president of the Australian Olympic
Oh,
Committee,
okay.
and I imagine a good close friend of Rachel Gunn as well, because it seems that now they are both receiving accusations of gaslighting the Australian public and undermining genuine athletes' efforts. So it also turns out, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but it might appear that Reagan's husband is actually one of the Olympic members of the judging panel
Well, he
that
was definitely her coach.
who
You
gave
know,
yeah.
give her kangaroo moves.
And yeah, in order for her to become the Olympic selection for Australia, she was competing against a breakdancer called Molly Chapman, who, if anyone goes online, can see Molly Chapman's actually performing breakdancing. But
Yeah, just quickly. So in case anybody has been living under a rock and doesn't know what you're talking about, please give us a breakdown of what has transpired at the end of the Olympics recently.
right, so if you have been living under a rock, then in some ways you're kind of lucky. But essentially, first time the Olympics has allowed breakdancing to enter into as a Olympic event,
Didn't
and
know.
unfortunately, this new opportunity has been massively sullied by somebody who decided they was not going to understand the assignment. And in a massive display of either artistic innovation being said by some, but being said by 99% of us, cultural appropriation and atrocities, Rachel Gunn, aka Ray Gunn, has entered, and by introducing new techniques as the human mop and the kangaroo, has thrown the entire event into question as to whether they could continue having breakdancing as an Olympic sport. Because some of the things this woman done, who scored 0 points, by the way,
Nil point.
nil point. But it seems that Rachel, who was in the first Olympic breakdancing
Come
competition,
on, Rach.
does not know how to break dance. And I mean, not by just like our standards, but just by even soccer mom standards. But yeah, we
But
all
like, if you grew up watching House Party and your cousins were breakdancing, they could have beat her. That's how bad it was.
yeah.
Yeah,
But if you have watched, grown up watching breakdancing and you didn't appreciate how good that film was, you need to watch Ray Gunn performing just so you can understand what
yeah.
suffering really looks like. But yeah, this is the breakdancing community are up in arms about this whole thing and how she was able to beat any of the entrants. And yeah, the breakdancing community seems to be divided. Some people support Ray Gunn's emphasis on artistry, is what she says. Is that
But there wasn't even that. Sorry.
I mean, unless you are a kangaroo in heat, I can't see how there was any of that, to be honest.
But here's the thing. Have you seen that she's come out and finally made a statement?
Um,
No?
no,
It's
I
fine.
haven't
You're not
the
missing
exact
much.
statement.
So she made a video statement and she was like, it's been really hurtful. I don't know why I did that accent. That's not her accent, but anyway, you get the picture. I just felt like it couldn't be a South London one. So it was like, it's been really hurtful. And I don't know why I sound like Paris Hilton. And the hateful comments have been pretty distressing. I'm gonna stay in Europe for a bit and then I don't mind doing interviews when I get back to Australia. And I'm like, why the fuck are you the victim? How
Wow,
are you the victim here? Like,
Europe.
are you okay? She's gonna stay in Europe for a while because I got a free trip, so I thought might as well extend that and see what happens. Thank you for all the good comments. If you want to see my scores, you can look them up. But I did get some scores, and I really did work my ass off. And I'm like, but you're an Olympian. I'm sorry, like good for you that you worked hard, but that shit wasn't good enough. Like I feel like if I'd worked hard, first of all, breakdancing apparently it's not a sport, it's an art, which is fine. That wasn't art, sweetheart. That wasn't arts. And that's why we need to be gatekeeping. That's why they should gatekeep stuff more because apparently she has a PhD. I'm going to tell you something, a quick story actually, if I have time, because I don't know, but I found this really funny. Apparently she has a PhD in breakdancing, right? So
We all knew were available, and there's been a long-standing field of
I don't know if she got it from one of Trump universities or whatever. I don't know how that worked out,
how
but
do you
she.
apply to study a PhD, and what are the preceding qualifications like?
But what was her dissertation on? Like, what the fuck did she like? Because to get a PhD, the way I understand it is you have to have something, you discover something or a piece of knowledge that isn't already in existence, and you study it and whatever. How to recolonize and decolonize and like, what did she do anyway? The reason I'm saying this was really funny. I went to a play the other day. It's going to sound very unrelated. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I went to a play the other day called The Death of England, right? In Soho Palace. I'm gonna say, is it Soho Place or Soho Palace? Anyone, what something Soho with a P at the end.
Mhm.
Anyway, and at one point, it's quite funny because it's 3 plays, but I went to the one with Delroy, which is the black character, and look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. But what I found was really interesting is that play has been running for a while. This Rachel thing, the ray gun thing, has only recently happened, right, in the last like week or so. In it, he referenced that, and like nobody picked it up apart from me. So he was talking about, in it, he's talking about somebody that was doing yoga and whatever, and then he goes, well, it's not like you can get a PhD for throwing your legs over your head. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Why was I the only one laughing? Nobody got it. I was like, what, are you people stupid? So I just want to say, if you're watching, I understood that joke. I got it. I was the only one laughing. But yeah, so that was it. She has a PhD. She's a doctor of breakdancing, and that's why they say that, you know, maybe she is technically, well, no, you know what, I'm not even going to say that, because if technically she knows what's good but she just practically can't apply that, then she should know what she did wasn't good, and she still seems to think that what she did was a good effort, like it was.
That's the best part of this, and obviously, I know you've questioned a few times that how long do we have to discuss this in ridicule, and does it become bullying at some point?
Yeah,
And I'm not sure when that point is, but it's not now.
no, it isn't now, especially because she's come out and given
Yeah,
done a video, so we have like longevity, there's been an
yeah.
extension.
And if you do find your conscience speaking to you and saying, "Are we giving this woman too hard of a time?" I urge you to take 2 minutes and rewatch the video in which she
It
performed.
will upset you all over again.
All over again, because there's a part where she's like, "Come on, everybody! Why aren't you guys on your feet? I've got the cap on. Can you not see? It's a baseball cap. Do I need to turn it to the side? Is that what it's going to take?"
Yeah, actually,
But it's
when you're a B girl like me, it's really hard, but we get it done.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So
I feel like that she does refer to herself as a B girl, even when she like receives coffee, and they're like, we've got a latte for a B girl," and she's like, "Over
you
here,
got Ray Gun. I'm a gun. And
right?"
it's funny that she has gun in her name, because I felt like that was a hate crime. So
It was a hate crime. It's
basically what I witnessed there.
yeah,
So
she's achieved a lot. I think it's almost had the reverse effect of putting up the Black Power salute back at the Olympics, where she's kind of
she's undone so much. We've got so far to go now.
yeah, she's set it all the way back. That whatever steps were taken in order to integrate the Olympics and to bring attention to
During the so when Kamala announced, like, or it was announced that she was going for presidency, they had these like white Zoom calls, like white women Zoom calls, like, and they were like trying to gather their women and be like, bro, we need to get, I bet the last thing on the agenda, we need to, Reagan set us back, okay, we need to do that. I bet they still do. We've got an emergency meeting because
where's the white girl from the Missy Elliott videos? Can we get her to come back?
We need to get her back. Oh my god! Even her as a child would have been better.
Would have been much better. I would have even taken if they took a monitor with her dancing on the monitor from way back then in her audition tape and just put that in the middle.
You know what would have been better? If Reagan really needed to be there, if they had the little white girl from Missy Elliott on the screen and she was just clicking her finger.
Yeah.
Every so often, that just would have been way better than what she was doing. So.
I would have rather seen Rachel Gunn do a lecture on cultural breakdancing with a PowerPoint presentation than actually demonstrating.
Indeed. So as we're talking about cultural appropriation, it's very interesting. So I was watching Drink Champs. I wasn't watching Drink Champs. I saw a clip come up, and I know that you've seen it as well, Dane, of Buju Banton, who's on Drink Champs. If you don't know what Drink Champs is, it's a vodcast, I guess, run by Noriega and hosted by Noriega and DJ EFN. And they basically drink and they speak to, various people. I've actually attended one.
Have you?
Yeah, I was in Miami. I attended one where it's age. So this is 2017, I'm going to say it was. So Irv Gotti was there, and
was it Wyclef as well?
Yeah, Wyclef was there. I was there at that one.
Yeah.
And and then it's very funny because I remember
did Irv Gotti start crying?
Was he crying? He wasn't crying.
I
I
forgot.
remember him saying that Diddy takes loads of drugs.
Yeah, it might have
Like,
been.
he
I
was like,
remember
Diddy takes
Benzino.
loads of drugs.
Yeah, I remember. No, Ev got he didn't start crying. He got weirdly creepy about talking about
He was
Ashanti.
being weird with Wyclef. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
creepy about that, and he
about
was
Claudette Ortiz from City High, and yeah, it
he
is.
was just you know what? It went on for ages, and people were standing around, and it was this really weird situation where I was there because my friend was there because this is a long story, but I was there because my friend was there, and but everybody else was there. I'm gonna assume that you've been around like American entertainment folk, right? And like it's always really funny to me how men are when there are like celebrity men around. And they're
Mm.
like, oh yeah, yeah. And they're like trying to act cool. It's like, yeah, I see that. I saw you on this and whatever. So I was just standing around, right? Because I'm like, okay, like that. I just like, unless he's gonna be like Nori, Nori, so, like that's all I care about, right? I don't really care about. And I'm look watching. So
The
afterwards,
super fan PA.
yeah, like literally, I was about to go what like that. They weren't really feeling that. Yeah, so I was like, by the way, Noriega's quite. In case he sees that, you're a very lovely man. He's quite short though. Like he's a lot. Yeah, I thought he was. Yeah, he wasn't. He came. So they were obviously quite drunk by the end of it as well. And so he like came up to me, and again, I think it's just because I just looked like I wasn't really bothered whether I was there, and everyone else was really keen to talk. So people just kept coming up and talking to me because I was literally waiting there for my friend to finish working, and people kept coming and talking. So he came up and he was talking to me. He was like, "Oh, did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, bro, I don't know you." So I was like, okay. And then DJ EFN came and he's talking to me and he was like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "London." And he goes, "Oh, blah blah blah, so and so's British." And I was like, "Yeah, I know him." And he was like, "Do you?" I was like, "No, of course I don't." What are you talking about like that? So he was just like, "Oh yeah, like that's British." So anyway, so I've been to drink champs. This is not the story. The story is the Buju Banton thing. So there's this clip going around of Buju Banton talking about first of all, he talks about Afrobeats, and he's like, "Oh, Afrobeats doesn't pay homage to reggae and dancehall and this, that, and the other." And then he's talking about he's also mentions reggaeton,
Yeah, he said about
right?
it. He mentioned
Yeah,
about
yeah. So he was like reggaeton as well. So everyone was kind of like had an opinion. They're going getting up in arms, and I was like, you know what? Let me go and watch the whole episode because I quite like Buju Banton and whatever, and I just wanted to like before I kind of formed an opinion on what he's saying. Um, I was like, let me watch it before we do this little thing where we've got a little clip and there's a huge backlash about this. So I did watch the whole thing. It's 2 hours and something or whatever, and I watched it yesterday, and it's very interesting. Whilst I disagree with what he said, and the reason I disagree with it because I think Afrobeats is its own thing, right? First of all, Afrobeats as it exists to us isn't a thing in Africa because they have Nigerian pop music and whatever. So like this Afrobeats thing is just something that they package all music coming out of Africa with and just export it under that one kind of heading, you know, which I don't think is necessarily right. I do know why he said that though. Like listening to what he was saying, I know why he said it. I just don't think he was right. I think he was right when he was talking about reggaeton. But when he's talking about Afrobeats, because there's a few things. There are albums, there is music. Burna Boy has music where it's talking about uplifting and whatever. So the reason that he's saying this, and the reason that the conflation of reggae with dancehall is really ridiculous anyway, is because they're very different genres. Reggae and dancehall, as you all know, they're very different genres. Reggae is socially conscious music. A lot of those things, like people like to go, "Oh yeah, I love Bob Marley, One Love." They forgot that he said also burning and looting for a reason. Like he was speaking about burning and looting and riots and stuff like that. You'll think, you know,
out of town and stuff as well. I think it's
yeah, 100%. Like speaking about socially conscious things, and that's quite like even in calypso. Like calypso's funny, but it's also if you listen to calypso, a lot of it will be speaking about social issues. They'll be talking about VAT coming in, or the government doing this and whatever else like that. And so
Sorry,
what he was,
sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's a really important point because this is like a really common occurrence that happens, particularly with Black music, which has always historically existed as one of the only platforms that we can talk about our aspirations for social mobility as well as social issues.
yeah,
What will happen is that as soon as these genres and subgenres of Black music become commercially viable, what happens is that there's always a divergence that's encouraged whereby the spectrum of topics that are discussed in that music becomes a lot more narrow, because soul would have included like social commentary. The R&B, which obviously has its origins within soul, definitely kind of revolves around a lot more homogenous subjects, in the same way that reggae and dancehall does as well. And we see that with music all the time, whether it's conscious rap becoming commercial rap or gangster rap. And
But that's what I think he's talking about. So having listened to it, and it's really funny because so you know how Caribbean people are kind of funny, yeah. Like I just think I know that Jamaicans think that they have the exclusivity on everything, but like actually that even the wordplay and everything is a very just Caribbean thing. Like I remember being in Dominica, and like the bus driver was arguing with this woman, and he's like, "Oh, you don't have manners for me, man," like that. So because manners is like in Dominica they say you don't have manners for me, right? So, and she goes, "Of course I don't have manners. I'm a woman. I have manners," like this. So, like that kind of stuff. Like it's just a very Caribbean thing, right? So, at one point, and it's so funny as well. Like this again, that whole thing where like, oh, these people are like my idols. So, Nori, I find Nori really funny because he just seems really clueless. And there's times where I know Buju Banter said something, and I know Nori has no idea what the fuck. He had no idea because he's like waiting to see, like, is he angry? I don't know what's happening or whatever. And he goes, so at one point Butcher goes, yeah, because them speak the English, but me and I speak that me speak Oldlish.
Yeah.
Because they speak in and me speak old, like that. And they were like, whoa, that's amazing. Like, and I'm like, bro, that's just Rasta man. Like, that's what Rasta man do. Me not understand, me overstand. Two of them, me wonder, me not impressed. Like, but they were like, oh my God, this is just delightful. But what he was talking about was about this like socially conscious music, right? And he's like, Africa doesn't speak about that. And what he was saying was true. Like in reggae, when they were coming up, they would speak about injustices in different parts of Africa, like in Kenya or South Africa. He was like, a lot of reggae artists spoke about the South African injustice and brought that to the world and did everything, which is right. The issue is he keeps on speaking about Africa, and the problem is Africa is a continent, right? So when Burna Boy speaks about Nigeria, he's speaking about Nigeria because he is Nigerian. He's not going to necessarily talk about.
And even when we talk about somewhere like Nigeria itself, that's also a collection of states that are,
100%, but it's a huge place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And so like these, and also there's so many things that are coming out. I just think it was an unfair criticism to level at a music that I think he's just not as well versed in and not involved in, and also maybe he doesn't know because they're not necessarily speaking about those things in English or Outlish. Yeah, they're speaking about them in Yoruba or whatever it is. So I think that I understand what he's saying, and he does go on to talk about the dilution of music and the dilution of, whenever we want to speak about things that are so they want to find a way to break it down and just make it entertainment. And it is about this kind of moving that social consciousness. And he's absolutely right. The impact that reggae has had across the world, it really has, especially, and he was talking about like how in Europe, because they were talking at one point, they were like, is it funny like seeing white people? And it's like, reggae music doesn't have color, da, 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 da. He was like, but that because it's much more appreciated in Europe, throughout Europe, than it is in America, for example. And so again, that kind of belies our take on those, our acceptance of that social consciousness within our music, in a way that in America they've been force fed this, no, don't worry, just keep rapping about shooting people and guns and all of this kind of stuff, like that kind of thing. So it was just it was really interesting. But I'm keen to hear, because you said you've heard someone, like, I don't know who it was.
Obviously, so after seeing a clip with Buju, who we're all very happy is free, by the way.
We
also I saw it's actually from a Ghanaian news website, where they had a quote from Fuse ODG, who I believe was probably one of the first people who was one of the healthy proponents of Afrobeats, because obviously with the song Antenna, and him having the whole Tina movement about this as being the new Africa. And essentially, I think he was just very cordial, very respectful in his reply, but he basically said that, there is a enormous kind of spectrum in terms of how you can approach Afrobeats, and he's done songs with both Damian Marley. So he's done socially conscious songs, but he also did a song with Major Lazer that's had over 1 billion streams, which has helped to like push the awareness of Afrobeat and onto new palettes, and not just brokering the kind of link and bridging the gap between English speaking countries, but places like Brazil, where they have like ballet funk and stuff like that as well, are becoming more aware of Afrobeats. And he said that it's not just about the songs as well. It is very lit, but he said that he used a very good portmanteau, where he said it's liberation music. That Afrobeats kind of has like a pop and more of a commercial sound, and it's lit, but it's also allowed for the elevation of consciousness. Where
Yeah.
he worked with the Ghanaian government for the Year of Return in 2019, which
Mm,
you attended as well, right?
I did.
Yeah. Amazing, yeah. And he said that basically that generated 1.3 billion for Ghana's economy. And as in turn, at prior to the Year of Return, had 42,000 visas were being issued by the Ghanaian government.
Mm.
After the Year of Return, 750,000 visas
Wow.
being initiated and been sent out. And there's also led to like a lot of people returning and members of the diaspora investing in businesses in Ghana, investing in property in Ghana, and just having their own homes there. So he's saying that let's not downplay it, and he's very respectful. But I think he just thinks that Banter missed the point. And to be quite honest with you,
Mm.
I'm definitely inclined to agree. I think that the influence of reggae and Jamaican music is massively downplayed, and I think that when you do scratch the surface of a lot of contemporary black music genres, if we want to reuse that, well, contemporary music in general, which in itself is black in itself, there's always going to be that kind of Jamaican influence. But then by that same token, and this is the point that Fuse also raises, that there is obviously, when you look at the roots of music, you can see that there can be that Jamaican influence. But he said if you follow the roots of any contemporary music, it's going to always lead you back to Africa, which is
And to be fair, Buju does say that.
he
So
said,
he does say that. He spoke about like, reggae. He said we always pay homage to Africa because that's where the beat comes from. That's where the drums come from and everything like that. And I just think that what it is that the world is a lot bigger than when he was making music before. And so I think that there are things that are coming out of it and he's maybe just not aware. And also there's just like, you can't hold technology back and you can't hold the way of the world back. And so there are different people that are doing things in very different ways. I think what he's seeing though is that this meteoric rise of the Burna Boys or whoever, with the ostentatiousness that's comes along with it, and seeing that, oh, they've just chosen the money rather than this other thing, when there are other things there.
Yeah.
I think, and hate me Nigerians, I think the ostentationness is just Nigerianness. Like that's just who they are. You know what I mean? Like in that kind of,
you could argue that's much more of an American influence than it is
it could be, but I think them Nigerians and Americans are very, very similar in that. I think
absolutely. Nigerians are like the Texans of Africa.
Oh yeah, 100%. Big and bombastic and everything. And so I think if they bring it in their own way, but what's that important is that the message gets said, right? And so it is doing that. And maybe there isn't any one person you can point to and go, yeah, he does, in the way that you could maybe say that possibly about a Bob Marley or a Burning Spear or whatever at the time. Okay, no, you can't do that, but that's okay as well. Like if people want to do, Nas didn't always make conscious music. He also made Uchi Wally at one point, but like he also said, I know I can be what I want. Like, so I don't know. I think that kind of demanding again this purity of people is a bit much. Like you can only seek it really in yourself.
I just think it's always very hard to make a generalized critique of any movement you see, particularly within the diaspora, when you look at it through the lens of capitalism, which is always going to give you leverage. And also when you have people who have historically been overrepresented below the poverty line, having access to capitalism is always going to have an effect on how people approach their artistic expression when they're able to monetize it. But I completely agree.
But that being said, I did think if you have time to watch some of it, I think he did make some good points. And also just watch it for the confusion on Noriega's face when Buju Banter says certain things. It's definitely worth it. But I think he does have some good points in terms of like, we were that leaders of social consciousness, but I think actually as people gain more affluence and more privilege, and Black people are doing that in certain pockets of the world or whatever, you become less inclined to have those and it's something that you have to kind of actively check yourself on. So I think that's a natural conclusion of it. But I think unless you got something to say, I think that's possibly a good place to wrap it up with. Buju driver, don't stop.
Absolutely, no. We're happy Buju's free, and also now World Bus is free as well. So if there's going to be an answer which is going to be socially conscious, but also has the hybrid of ostentatiousness, then there's no one like Vibes is going to be able to do that once his honeymoon is finished. But this is This is great. Thank you for everybody that's tuned into the Breakfast Banter live
Thank
show.
you for everyone that's tuned in and tuned out. You know what? Because if you have to go, you have to go. Like, it's
No,
okay.
yeah, you have to get to work. Hopefully that you got to be able to hear some of the stories. Some of you have put in the comments you want to hear about some more issues to discuss, and we sorry we were able to get to those. However, if you do want to send your concerns in, then both myself and Z do have our own lives across the socials as well. So if you do have any serious concerns about the what you want to discuss, you can talk to me about that
Yeah.
on Citizen Dane, which is available now on Spotify. So send those into the email as well. And you can also catch Z on your socials as well. She'll be doing live across Insta and TikTok, and we continue these discussions. So,
so just to be clear, it's not Z. It is Z, but you won't find me at Z. You'll find me at the Reluctant Accountant on social media. So, on TikTok, Instagram, I am on YouTube, and also 2nd of September, the Miseducation. That's Lauren Hill. The Misinformation podcast is being released, so don't miss it because you'll miss out. There we go.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys. Have a great day. Thank you, Z, and see you guys next week.
Thank you.